Well, hello, my name's Marcus de Sautoy. I'm a professor of mathematics in Oxford. And I've made a few programs for the BBC about mathematics. I did a couple for Horizon. I took Alan Davis on a journey showing him what maths is really about, called Alan and Marcus Go Forth and Multiply. But a few years ago I took over from Richard Dawkins as the Oxford Professor for the Public Understanding of Science. Which is quite exciting because it gave me my first chance to sort of look a little bit outside of my subject. I'd really been doing research mathematics, making radio programs, writing about maths, but I thought this is a really nice chance to start to look a little bit beyond my area of research. And after I'd done a couple of these Horizons about maths, Horizon came to me and said, well, we want to do this program all about consciousness, but it's quite a tough subject and we're not quite sure how to do it. We could have an expert in consciousness, but unfortunately it's such a sort of controversial area in a way. There are so many different views of what consciousness is that we're nervous of choosing an expert, and partly as well because an expert will be sort of talking down and we want somebody who'll take the audience on a journey and not have preconceived ideas. So they said, oh, would you be interested in doing this program about consciousness? And I thought, yeah, that's a great chance to do something a little bit outside of mathematics. And so I said, yeah. And I don't really know, I'm not an expert in consciousness, but I thought what a great journey to go on to sort of find out what makes me me. And that's really what the program is about, trying to understand this big problem of the sense that we have a feeling that there is somebody called I inside of me that has an experience at the secret garden party different from the experience. I don't know what's going on in your secret garden party, but I do know what I'm experiencing here, and just conscious of the little hoot out there, but there are a lot of things I'm not conscious of. So what gives me, the brain, that sense of there being an I inside there? If I've got toothache, I understand the sort of the nerve connections to the brain and how it fires certain things. But why do I feel like there's an I inside of me which is experiencing that toothache? And what is it? Or is it just what makes the brain give you that sense of there being somebody locked inside there? So that was the idea of the program. I'll give you a little bit of idea of how these Horizons are made, because there's kind of some real unsung heroes in these Horizon programs, which are the researchers at the BBC, because they do a huge amount of the work, going out, finding out what the really big stories are in this program. So, and they're the least paid, but they do the most work. And so the researcher went out and found all the current things going on in consciousness. And it's a really interesting period, actually, because consciousness, I think, about even up till 20 years ago, was really a subject for philosophy. And science didn't really know what to do. I mean, it wasn't really a thing that you could investigate because it seems so internal. How do you actually test about consciousness? But now I think almost feels like, a bit like Galileo discovering the telescope, or using the telescope to discover things out in space that you couldn't see before. Because we are in an age, I think, in neuroscience, when we do suddenly have a telescope. We have the fMRI scanner. We can actually ask the brain things without having the sort of observer, me, or somebody subjective involved in the experience. So I think it is a really exciting time to actually make a program like this. Now, I am a mathematician, so I came to the kind of journey in a very mathematical way. I wanted to sort of test it in the sort of the rigorous way that I do my mathematics. And it was interesting. I'll show you a little bit at the end part of the story, which really shows that mathematics could be a fundamental part in trying to understand what consciousness is. I'm going to show you some clips from the program and tell you a little bit about the making of this program and the experiments that I was involved in. For me as a mathematician, one of the key things, if you're trying to investigate something, what's often a very good idea is to investigate something which is completely opposite to it, or what's not it. I mean, if I'm trying to understand prime numbers, sometimes it might be that's really difficult. Maybe it's easier to understand numbers which aren't prime numbers. So that was, I think, quite a good thing to do with consciousness. We sort of all feel we are conscious, but why don't we look at things which we think aren't conscious or don't have a consciousness and see whether we can find a difference? Well, actually, there's a moment when we probably were not conscious or self-aware of ourselves, which is when we were babies. There's a moment, you know, when does a baby, can you say a moment when a baby actually achieves a sense of self-awareness? So that seemed a good place to start in this program. I've got, I mean, I don't remember it, but I have a 14-year-old son, and I do remember a moment when he sort of seemed to suddenly become aware of the I inside of him, and there was certainly a point when his brain just wasn't able to do that. But how do you ask a baby? I mean, babies, you know, by the time they're self-aware and can talk, they really are self-aware. So how can you ask a baby about whether it's conscious or not? And the results were really interesting because what they were able to do. So to recap, I was just in that scanner. I had to do absolutely nothing other than every now and again kind of go into a Zen-like state and just every now and again decide whether I'm going to press my left finger down or my right finger down. And I had goggles which had just letters running across my vision, and I had to then record which letter I was seeing when I consciously made my decision to press right or left down. Now, the experimenters, this is an experiment in Berlin, by scanning my brain, they were able to tell 6 seconds before I did what I had decided to do. 6 seconds is a huge amount of time. If you think about it, 1 elephant, 2 elephant, my brain's already 3 elephant, decided 4 elephant, 5 elephant. They know what I'm going to do, 6 elephant, and now I've consciously made a decision that I'm going to press my left finger down. I mean, it's an incredibly long time. The brain is already, and why they can see this is they can see the motor activity being prepared to press the left finger down. So what's weird is the experimenters, their consciousness knows before my consciousness is aware of what I am going to do. By scanning my brain, they know that I'm going to press my left finger down. But I don't know that yet. I think I'm still making my decision. But my brain is, then I suddenly become conscious. Okay, you know, there's lots of questions about, well, what is I? Isn't that your brain doing that or something? But there was a threshold moment when something happened where I felt like I was deciding now, and I felt it was me that was deciding to press my left finger down. But it seemed like my brain had already prepared that for me, and that they knew what I was going to do before I seemed to be aware that I was going to do it. So for me, this was the most sort of, I don't know, unsettling experiment in the whole sequence, because it really challenged, well, how much control do I have? You know, maybe you all came here to the secret garden party. It wasn't you that decided, but it was something, you know, your brain prepared this activity for you, and then you just carry it out. So how important is consciousness? Maybe it's a very secondary thing in our actual behavior, and we like to think it is really important. Well, to finish the program, we actually, as a kind of thank you for going into the brain dissection in Imperial College at the Parkinson's disease thing, we ended with a sequence where my consciousness, or maybe my consciousness didn't decide to do this, but we decided what would happen to my brain after I die. And here I carry around my donor card, so if I drop dead at the secret garden party, please deliver me to the Imperial College, and I'll have my brain dissected by somebody, probably in another Horizon program. But thank you for choosing to come or not to the Secret U. Thank you. It's got a consciousness of its own. Thank you.
Put a cable tie that, I think. Marcus, thank you ever so much for coming and speaking.
Yeah, pleasure.
Okay, we've got a bit of time for questions, so I'll try and get round to you with the mic. Okay, yeah, just put hands up. Hello, sir.
Marcus, did you come to a conclusion? Was there any advantageous to have a consciousness? It seems like there's all negatives but no positives.
I think that's really interesting because, you know, when I said about the chimpanzees, you know, it's almost a threat. But I think we did an experiment which didn't get into the program, which was a sort of thought diary. So every now and again, I would receive a text message alerting me to record what I was aware of, what I was thinking of at that point. And it was very interesting that the majority of the time when I recorded this, and it was analysed by a team in Santa Barbara, was that if I wasn't thinking about the arsenal or mathematics, most of the time I seemed to be thinking about the future. That I think that that's one of the powers of consciousness, is it allows us to constantly scan into the future and put ourselves, our I, into the future, and so we can make plans. And that has a downside as well. One of the things when we interviewed all these people with dogs, they said,